Today we're lucky enough to have Michael Peters. How are you?
Hi, how are you?
Michael Peters Yacht Design, the preeminent kind of yacht designer here in America and beyond. Thank you for having us in your lovely home.
Well, it seemed like a nice place to do it. We got good weather today.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
it doesn't get any better. Like we have a guy fishing right off the dock.
Can't beat that.
I love your little Hellcat back there, beautiful Bertram 20, right?
20, it's 1970. I have a little fleet of old Bertrams, and I've restored them all myself. And I'm in the middle of doing a 31 right now, which at this stage of my life turned out to be too big a boat.
Oh, really?
I've been working on it for 5 or 6 years, and I'm ready to be done.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Tell us exactly what you do on the daily.
Well, it's probably different than a lot of people think. We don't spend as much time on the water as we'd like. And I had a girl work for me once shortly, and she says, "You guys never go on the water." And I said, "No, that's called a boat owner or yacht owner." No, we basically an architect, and we run an architect's office that both handles the aesthetic side of boats and the technical side. But basically, we're working out of an office on computers, and I've got an office of 10 people, and we've been doing this now since I moved here in 1981. So we've been doing it a long time. We've done a lot of boats.
Kind of the marriage between art and science, right?
Absolutely. I can never figure out exactly which I am. I always tell people I'm split right down the middle. I'm half engineer and half artist, and they fight with each other constantly. And by that I mean there's a real conflict of the technical side versus the aesthetic side, and having to balance the two.
Yeah, and you're balancing it with the manufacturers, right? Has to be a lot of communication between the individual manufacturers and their needs.
There is, and it's actually doing that side of it is more difficult than people think. Doing a custom boat is actually a little easier because you're answering to one client. Mm-hmm. When you're doing production boats, you have to think of it in a much broader sense. And there's a Kurt Vonnegut quote that I always loved, and that is that no great piece of art was ever done for more than an audience of one. And basically, if you're lucky enough to like that, good for you, but it wasn't done for you. And so custom boats appeal to an audience of one. Production boats, it's much broader and much more difficult in many ways, because you're balancing what more people are going to be interested in against costs, manufacturability, and custom boats, you can pretty much do anything you want. And I love that end of it, but they're rare. And they kind of spoil us for the other work. Yeah.
Well, hey, you save it for the good time. So 1981, you started here. Let's go back a little further, maybe how you got to set up shop here in Sarasota, maybe before that.
Well, I think most boat designers' lives stem back to boating as a child. Mm-hmm. And I actually grew up in inner city Los Angeles, very tough neighborhood. But my father, during the summers, ran a summer camp on Catalina Island. And I always tell people that we got all the hand-me-downs. We got all the boats that people didn't want anymore would be donated to the camp. And very early on, 14 or 15 years old, I started doing the repairs and maintenance on those. But we lived in a canyon that had no road, it had no telephone, and it didn't have electricity. And so everything in and out of the camp was by boat. And so that was my early touch with boats. And there was, I'd say from the age of 15 on, I always knew, I thought I was going to be a boat builder. I didn't think I was going to be a designer. But then I realized that as I was building things, I always was modifying them and changing them, and realized that I wanted to have the design input. And so by the time I was in college, I realized that I was more design oriented than I was to stay on the hands-on boat building side. Although fresh out of college, I was a carpenter on wood sailboats. And so I still have that in me. And it's funny because you mentioned the boat behind us. I still like to do hands-on work. I don't know if you noticed as you drove in today, there's a garage out there that is a boat shop. Yep. And I think I'm probably the only boat shop on Siesta Key. But I restored several boats, or parts of them, in that. And I still like to do the hands-on work. I think it leads a lot to how you design. If you understand boats on that level, you're certainly going to design differently than somebody who's never worked on them.
Right. So, real quick, is your favorite spot working on the boat in the garage, designing the boat in the office, or being on the boat out on the water?
Man, that's interesting because my wife says, well, you're not really a boater. And I go, I work on boats all the time, but I probably have spent more time working on them than I have actually boating.
Right.
I do love being out on a boat. From very early on, I was, handling boats in and out of tight harbors and so I think I'm pretty proficient as a boat handler. But I've definitely spent more time in the shop working on them. But summers are reserved for using them.
Yes, 100%. So after college, what was the next step in your journey?
Well, in college, I actually developed a hull that I had interest in patenting. And so by the time I was in the third year of architecture at USC, I actually announced to the school that I was dropping out. By my third year, I already had a patent attorney and was trying to develop that sort of thing. So after leaving school, I built the prototype to that and began to promote it really across the country. Now, this is prior to the internet. Mm-hmm. So promoting something across the country back then was mostly by phone and mail some stuff off. And I was trying to get somebody interested in developing a stepped hull and doing a production line. Early on, I made contact with Whitaker Corporation, which at the time had its headquarters in Los Angeles and was the owner of Bertram, Riva, and Trojan Yachts. And so right in my backyard, I had really the largest conglomerate of boat builders back then. And we thought we were making some pretty good progress with that, and it didn't end up moving forward. But I had gotten sort of the itch that this is what I was going to do. And I then got married and was out east and found out that a company in New Orleans had just bought Cigarette out of Miami. And so during our honeymoon, we went off to New Orleans and ended up making a deal for the patent out there. So that moved me to New Orleans. And being in New Orleans, I was working with Cigarette in Miami, which eventually moved me to Florida. And that's how we sort of got out here after leaving the company.
Fantastic. Those boats go pretty fast after you design them, didn't they?
Well, it's funny that I started off in fast boats, and so for many years I was associated with fast boats or race boats, and I'm like, no, this isn't what I want to do. And I felt that I was really being typecast, and I probably spent the first 20 years of my career trying to tell people I could do more than race boats.
Right.
And now I've spent the last 20 years trying to tell people, no, we used to do race boats. And nobody knows about it anymore.
So right now you really have a broad range of companies that you work with and a very broad range of styles of boats to work with too, right?
Yeah, it took a lot of years to get there. As I told you, we a bit typecast, in the beginning. I had an opportunity to do a race boat, and then that led to another one. But I was being kind of typecast and wasn't given really much opportunity outside the high performance boats. What it did for me though was I found out that I was the only American working in Europe.
Gotcha.
And so the racing managed to get my name known around Europe, specifically Italy. Mm-hmm. And so we were then getting opportunities just because I was the only American they knew. Mm-hmm. And that was really a good foothold into the business overall. For many years, I had Americans that thought I lived in Europe. They didn't know I was based out of Florida because the majority of the work we were doing was over in Europe.
Gotcha.
So it was a big step forward. But then I made a very deliberate effort to break the stereotype. And we started off actually trying to do large yachts, 100, 150 foot boats. And spent a lot of time doing designs and proposals specifically for European yards. And then after some very frustrating years of doing that, having some success at it, but having to fight for everything that we were doing, we became more centered on boats under 100 feet. And that's what led us into working with a lot of different manufacturers. And I'd say we've probably through the years had pretty close relations with 20 to 25 different manufacturers, doing everything from center console boats to sport fishing, to yachts, to family cruisers, and it really, we really have diversified a lot since then.
And it's changing quickly because companies are refreshing or rebuilding boats in a quicker manner, and then international regulations, right? They're coming back to you to make modifications, maybe make one to fit in a smaller space, have the same performance, correct?
Yeah, the thing that we found by getting involved with the manufacturers was that if you're working with an individual for a custom boat, very hard to get the client. Every designer in the world is trying to get the same client, and only one's going to land them. And if you do get them, you're going to work 3 years on that project, and when it's done, maybe you'll get another one. By working with the manufacturers, we're given groups of boats to do, and then we're given groups of boats to keep fresh. And so it's a much better business model of having repeat business, all developed off of a line of boats that you're set out to do. And this has been across, like I said, a number of different manufacturers. And so now, we just had the Miami Boat Show, and we sent a couple guys down there, but we no longer go there looking for work, whereas we used to go there and just pound the pavement looking for that one guy. And so it's become a much better way to do business.
Fantastic.
I think sometimes I've had 4 different careers, 4 or 5. And like I said, started off as a wood boat carpenter, and then got heavily involved in racing. And by the time we were done with racing, we had won 20 world championships, 15 consecutive world championships. And really, at that point, it was like, what is there left to do on this? And so we made a real effort to get away from that. But then we've gone through years where the guys will go, oh no, not another sport fish. And we'll just do one sport fish boat after another. And you have 3 or 5 years of nothing but that type of boat. And now we're sort of in this segment of the outboard boats. Yeah. And we're like, oh no, not another outboard boat. And yet we have several successful lines of them, and we have to go with the trend. And so I think that what we've been good at is understanding that there's a new trend, taking a builder into that, a market that they haven't been in before, and really trying to ride that for as long as we can. What we're doing right now that might surprise people is we're heavily involved with small patrol boats. And so what may be the last chapter for me is working with several countries around the world in all the hot spots. But that's the segment that we're developing now, is a specific line of boats that are designed here in the United States that are now approved for foreign military sales. And a great deal of the NATO countries are going to be getting these boats because of the troubled spots. Both in Ukraine, North Korea, China, everywhere that there's water and that there's trouble is areas that we're involved with right now.
Fantastic. Sounds exciting though, actually, to be on the cutting edge of something fast again, right?
I think for me, my favorite stuff is the stuff that involves art. Yeah. My favorite stuff is the stuff that we get to give a real artistic touch to it. And maybe we're working with a very special builder that does beautiful craftsmanship. The other side of me that I was talking about, the technical side, loves the patrol boats, loves the very pragmatic approach to them. Here's the problem, solve the problem. Aesthetically, you don't have that. When you have a patrol boat, it is all down to function, and there's requirements that you have to meet. And it's a technical question. I think for me, through the years, both challenges. I've never lost interest in the technical side. The artistic side is rare. We'll do several projects where we're really not that involved in the design aesthetically, but it is the custom boats where you get to do that. So this split, this hasn't changed throughout my 40 or 50 years in the business, that I as much as I love the artistic side, I won't touch it unless I'm doing the technical side. And if I only have one side to do, it'll always be the technical side. I'm first and foremost a naval architect.
Gotcha.
Secondly, a designer, a stylist, although I think there's times we've done a very good job with that. But I'm primarily interested in the technical side.
That's very interesting, and I guess form does follow function to a degree, right? And then the rest is all in the eye.
Well, it's interesting because the race boats, people used to think, oh, they're such pretty boats. And I say, well, all we're doing is just putting a covering over all the stuff that needs to be in the boat. It's like shrink wrapping it. And I think that a lot of design, if it's honest, that's what it does. If you start with the basics of the hull and the structure and the propulsion, and if you make those the dominant part of the design, they're going to take priority, and then the rest is you fill in. Now, a lot of designers start with the opposite. They start with the aesthetic, they start with the layout, and then they have trouble getting it to balance and run right because they've given the priority over to basically the appeal of the boat. But I approach it as first it has to be a boat. First it has to be a proper boat and run right, perform right. And so I put the priorities in an opposite order. Well, when I was first starting out in Southern California, the last person I worked for was a guy named Bob Finch. And Bob was a fire chief that had 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off. And in his off time, he was a yacht designer. And he was designing sailboats. And I had the job of building and finishing his 46-foot wooden sailboat in his backyard by myself. And he used to hear about these phone calls I would get from Whitaker and stuff, and he just absolutely thought I was a kid that was just dreaming and had no reality at all. And I think he must have just laughed at me behind my back and didn't have any idea that I was really going to pursue this as a career. But he said to me one day, he says, you know the odds of making it in yacht design is that only one makes it in any generation. There's only one notable designer in any one generation. And that really sunk in with me. And I thought, well, okay, then I want to be that one.
The juices started flowing, you started competing, huh?
Yes. And I thought, well, those are bad odds, but they're good enough.
Well, I think it turned out pretty okay since everybody knows where your office is.
Well, it wasn't always easy.
Yeah.
I can tell you, I have everything from bankruptcies to murders in my portfolio. Yeah. And I had to go through some really, really rough times to survive. And now at this stage of my career where I'm getting ready to hand it over to the next generation, the one thing that I try to instill on them is what happens if you have to go back to those days? Do you have what it takes to dig deep and hang in there? And I forever tell people, I don't think I was the most talented designer, but you won't find anybody with more tenacity. And the ability not to quit is more important than talent any day.
That's fantastic. Well, I want to thank you for your time. This is, by the way, thank you for having us in your home again and in front of the boat. This is absolutely stunning back here, and appreciate it. And if you've never been on board a Michael Peters design boat, what you should do is step on board, put the hammer down, and see the performance. Always amazing.
All right.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.